When I cut clay, I always pull it towards me. Which means I have to turn it. Okay. And then just pound out the corners and you're pretty much ready to go. Get the first close So as close to its fear as you can get is good.
Okay.
Because I whacked the clay on there and it already had clay sitting on it, it's slightly damp. Sometimes if the bat is too dry and you slap a piece of clay on it, it's not going, if the clay surface is a little bit dry, it's not going to adhere, and when you go to center it, you're just going to pop it right off. And it happens to everybody, so it happens to me every now and again, and it's annoying. But I find that if the center of the bat is just a little bit damp, then it adheres better.
So if your clay is kind of dry too, do you just use your sponge to just wipe it?
If this is dry, then yeah, I would squeeze out my sponge and do one stripe through the middle. More than that, and you've got too much water, it makes slip and you just slide right off too. So it's like that delicate balance. So, especially when you're beginning, try and find the bats with the concentric circles, because that's going to give you a target. So, because what you really want is to be able to slap it on as close to center as possible. And really you're slapping it down hard because you want it to stick. So, move these guys out of the way. Usually you would have a plastic bag, so your clay bag. I wouldn't leave those out if I had a clay bag.
You want to get some plastic?
That'll be fine.
Okay.
I'll ball them back up. We'll just do that. There we go. So yeah, so because the clay is still kind of provisionally stuck on, we're going to want to push it down as well as starting to push it to center. So the way we're going to center it is first we're going to push down and get it stuck. And then we're going to start pushing forward from the left-hand side, pushing through like you're trying to shake hands with somebody off to the right. And that's going to help get it on center before we do anything else.
So down and forward with the left hand.
So I've got my, we're going to call this the drumstick. So I've got my drumstick over the edge, and right now, really what I'm doing, all of the action is happening. I've got the clay coming into my fingers, but my drumstick is pressing it down. And that's going to help, and I'm just going to keep sticking my hand in the water, keeping it down. And that's helping get it in there. Now, I'm going to start, now you're going to see my elbow is stuck into my thigh, and I am quite, the edge of the stool is right here. And I'm up on it, I'm holding on with my thighs, and my hand is nice and wet so you can see that it's making slip. And I'm just going to keep dipping my hand in the water, pressing down and pressing in that direction at the same time. Now,
Is your hand rubbing on the bat? Are you?
Yes. Yep, my fingers are touching the bat. There we go. And I'm pretty close to center now. Let me get my other hand in here now, and I'm going to squeeze in a tripod. So my fingers are up here. If I have a smaller piece, then, you know, let's see, yes, then the right fingers tuck under. But I'm going to squeeze in a tripod, my fingers and the bases of both my hands. And that's going to bring it in the center. So now it's not wobbling anymore. And you have to keep getting your hands wet. A lot of people will take a sponge and just squeeze water onto it. And if you look in the splash pan, there's just a couple of drops. So I haven't used too much water, and I haven't poured water on top of it. And not using too much water keeps the whole thing from being really sloppy and soft.
Okay.
So you want to just put as little water on it as possible, and that's going to allow the clay to keep some body. So that tripod is important because you're pushing, see I'm making slip, you're pushing from 3 points, and those 3 points are going to help push it into a nice round.
So fingertips and 2 heels?
So fingertips and 2 heels, yes. And if your fingertips aren't meeting, then it's really right fingertips and 2 heels. So I can even take my hand away and still do the tripod. Okay, and now I'm going to cone. And the coning helps center the clay all the way to the middle of the ball. So right now, just the outside of the ball is centered. So when I cone up and push it down, it's causing all of the clay to come into a spiral, and all the platelets in the clay are arranging themselves in a way that is going to allow you to move it. It's going to be much more homogeneous in texture, and it's not going to want to bump around, and the entire piece will be on center instead of just the outside. So we're coning, and to cone, I'm going to start hooking in underneath. My pinky is rubbing against the real head, hooking underneath and pulling towards the left hand. So I make sure my hands are wet, and the speed is pretty consistent. It's not slow. There we go. I'm going to hold at the top, and if you notice, my thumb stayed over the whole time. If I allow my hand to come like this, then a weird little growth is going to come off the top and usually fall off. You'll see me putting the slip back on the clay. It keeps me from having to put that much more water on. Slip is a great lube for your clay. And it keeps you from putting so much water on there that it becomes sloppy. So there you go. And now I'm going to push it over. And I'm going to push it over and remain okay, so if I push it like this, whoop, there it goes. It comes down into itself. I'm not pushing straight down. If I were to push straight down, it's going to buckle back and forth on itself, and then you've got to wobble in your pot without even starting. And you don't want that. So scrape some of the slip off because you can't have too much slip. Just get my hands on it. Now I usually cone 3 times, so I'm just going to do it again.
Right now I'm like super into the as smooth as I can get it. Usually I'm using
And I don't know if you could see, or maybe you'll be able to see when you look at your video later, the clay as it comes up is a little bit lumpy and wobbly. And that's good because we're working the wobble right now.
Okay, so that's the purpose.
Yes.
my little leggy one that has it all the
There we go.
time. Did you see it when I got refired a second time?
And putting my hand down there and pulling that, I call that the skirt, taking the skirt off, is going to help keep you from trying to push a random assortment of clay back into your ball, and that's going to pull you off center. So if you, especially if you didn't quite hit the center, when you threw that ball down, you're going to have to push it onto center, and it's usually going to leave what we call the snail trail, which is like a little bump of clay. And if you try, hey Zarin, if you try and push that back in, then you're pushing a wobble back into your clay because you're pushing a little more clay on one side than you have on the other. So I see you nodding, so that makes sense.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. I think we did that 3 times now, but that's all right. 2 or 3 times is good. It can be kind of hypnotic to do that coning. Well, once you've gotten it, because when you push the clay forward, you're not pushing it down; it pulls itself down. So it can be kind of fun and hypnotic, but don't do it more than 4 or so times, because the clay will start to separate and the grout will come to the surface, and you really don't want that. Okay, so I'm just going to tap it one more time with my tripod. All right, still looking and feeling good. So I'm going to make a little dent in the top. Whoop. I'm going to make a little dent in the top to let me know where I want to open. So just getting it damp. That little bony landmark right there, that's going to help me. So 2 hands, 1 tool. You'll hear me say that so many times. And a bunch of the other teachers say that now too, it does work. So I'm gonna put my hand here and I'm just gently laying it there. It's not pushing, it's not doing anything. It's just the clay sliding through it. But that thumb is gonna let me know where to lay my little bone grain mark in. And I'm just gonna gently push down. And now you can see that I know where I want to put right here. Oh, I have a little, okay, so you can see that little bump right there, that's an air bubble. So that's okay. I'm in there. Start it a few times. And I'm gonna keep going. That will make it a tiny bit wobbly, no deal. Once you've gotten as deep as you want to be, you can test it. As I threw the clay on the floor. You have to stop your wheel before you do this, otherwise you're going to cut a hole in the bottom of your pot.
Okay.
So I'm going to take my pin tool, I'm going to stick it in there, and then I'm going to run my finger down to the bottom. And when I pull it out, it's going to tell me how deep it is.
Okay.
That's good for a cylinder. So I'm not gonna. This is not something I would want to trim. So I'm just going to go down to the bottom. And then I get my finger down there and I compress, and I've just closed it. Otherwise, you're gonna have a hole in the bottom of your pot.
Yeah.
Okay, so a little bit more water. Once again, I'm not using my sponge to pour water on it. And I'm gonna start pulling back. Once again, 2 hands, 1 tool. I've got my fingers hooked like this. They're pushed together really hard. And I'm pulling back. I'm making sure everything stays right there. And I'm pulling back towards my belly button. There you go. And now the floor is almost flat. But we're going to get in there and compress and make it flat. So I'm going to go from the inside, just pressing down and moving clay to the outside and flattening it out, and we're just going to move back to the inside, and compressing helps push those platelets down flat and make the bottom stronger. There you go. Put some water on there. And now I'm going to recenter, and I do this, I recenter the ring every time. I'm holding on with my finger here and my thumb out here. I'm going to put my sponge in between and press down. And if I've managed to get off a little bit when I'm opening or laying the floor down, then that's going to put me back on. That usually makes a little bit of a skirt, which I'm going to remove. And I just put my extra clay in the bucket.
Yeah, I figured out all of it.
And with wet hands and a wet sponge, we're going to pull up the wall a little bit. So my hands are wet, my sponge is here. I like to kind of hold it, it's like a little dog tongue thing going on. And now I'm going to clean the wheel head. I'm not really cleaning the wheel head. This is just a good position to get in so you can start the control. This is the most important part right here, that little bit of sponge in between your finger and the clay. Get that again. So I'm going to push down there. I'm not pushing in, I'm pushing down. So that is, the finger is pushing down, which is why your wheel head is now suddenly clean. All right, so now I'm going to change my fingers a little bit so they're nice and strong. 2 hands, 1 tool. My thumb is on the back of my hand. My fingers are on the inside. And now I'm going to start pushing in with the side of my finger. Can you see the clay move?
Okay.
I'm pushing in with the side of my right hand. And now I've set my tool, and I'm going to just start to spread that clay, stretch it upward. So I will definitely show you again how that works. And sometimes a little bit of clay gets stuck on the top like that. It's okay. I'm going to clean my sponge, and I compress the rim almost every time. So I'm just going to take the sponge and fold it over it and really gently compress that rim. Okay? There we go. And now I'm going to come in from the outside, cleaning the wheel head, just like we did before. And now I'm pushing in with the side of my finger from the outside. The inside hand isn't pushing back, it's just holding space. And now I've moved some clay and I'm holding my hands like a tool. I'm not letting them get any further apart. I'm not letting one slip down or up. I'm just moving them both together up towards the rim. And I'm gonna hold, 2, 3, and let go. And I try always to hold at least for a couple of seconds at the end of the pull, because that allows me to touch the entire pot in the same way. So I'm gonna compress that rim. You're gonna think I'm obsessed. I always compress the rim. It makes it stronger. It allows you to store a little extra clay up there while you're pulling up, so that if you decide you want to change direction and go out, you've got enough clay to do that. If you throw and you've got a little teeny thin rim, you're not going to be able to push it in because there's not enough there to support it. It's just going to buckle into itself. And you're not going to be able to pull it out because there's not enough there to spin out as you pull it out. So I'm going to pull this one out just to show you how it works. So I'm pushing in just as I would at the inside. Now I'm going to start changing direction. And I want you to notice how the shape of the rim, okay, go ahead and spot there, okay, how the rim changes as we pull it out. All right, do you remember how fat that rim was a minute ago? Now it is that much thinner. So all we did to make it, to take it from a cylinder out to a bowl, is just change direction of our pull. So that'll be something to think about. Now we still got some clay down there. I'm going to take off that little skirt. I'm going to do one more pull, and then we're going to get you on there.
When you pulled it outwards, was that your right hand or your
My right
left
hand
hand?
is still pushing, but my left hand starts to do the driving, so to speak.
Okay.
So I'm getting over there. And I'm going to round it out a little more instead of spreading that rim out more, because otherwise it's going to get too thin. Now that is a nice untrimmed. So the reason we've got this guy, because I always will have you have, I won't ever have you get a tool that you don't need, is to clean up the bottom edge. So if it looks like this, if we cut it off now, it's going to have a really rough, sharp edge that you're going to have to deal with when you trim, which is no fun. So we're just going to take that off. So I'm going to come in here. Usually if I had a cylinder, I would just come straight down the side and cut that little extra bit off. But because I don't have a whole lot of room to do that, I'm just going to start right up here and come down like this, and then come out. And we've taken off a little extra clay. Now this is where this guy comes in. And then the edge. And you can see even when I'm using a tool, it's two hands on one tool. So I'm in here. I could do this with one hand, but then, there's nothing to support it. So I'm going to be all over the place. I did the same with the other one. So I'm going to come in here, stab that, pull it away. Get in there and clean it up a little bit. There we go. Clean that up. And yep, the last thing we're gonna do is compress that rim a little bit. There you go. Let's see. Oh, there it is. All right, and then we cut it off. Usually I'll cut it off with the wheel turning, but that is personal decision. And then the nice part about that is you can just take it off.
Okay. And then you just let it dry.
And you just let it dry.